we are talking about discipleship. That's kind of the theme of this season. And one of the major ways that a disciple of Jesus will look different from a disciple of our culture is the way that we deal with our ego. And so we're talking about ego tonight. And our culture has a very interesting take on the ego, because most ancient cultures and most people groups throughout time have thought that the main problem with people is too much ego, too high a view of the self. Pride or hubris is what leads to violence, is what leads to selfishness. Our culture has flipped that, and we think that it's actually the opposite, that it's too little self-esteem, too low a view of the self, that leads to drugs and that leads to violent crime and that kind of thing. And the answer that our culture gives is that those people need to love themselves more. Does that sound familiar? Like, have you guys heard this before? So yeah, we're painting with broad brushes here. We're not being real specific, right? But yeah, so our culture, I think it's pretty unambiguously wants to help us get a high self-esteem. That's a major like focus. And so how do you guys think that project's going? Like, do you feel like we are a culture with people with a lot of high self-esteem? Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah. What about the self-esteem piece? Like, what have you heard? How do you think our culture's doing with it?
I think a big deal. I think ego just means I.
Yeah.
But the major importance of it is the ancients had an idea of a divine fatalism, and their kind of faith was cared for them, and they wanted to develop themselves in such a way that they encountered that faith as their ability. Whereas nowadays, I think that we have a much stronger view of individualism.
Yeah.
Whereas you're looking at it more or less, we're playing our part. Whereas nowadays, we feel like we can determine our part.
Yeah.
So there's a weird like divine fatalism that no longer occurs.
Right.
And there's a good thing for that because people can manifest themselves. However, the downside to that is there ends up being a lack of personal responsibility.
Yeah.
So that's the way I would look at it.
Totally. That's interesting. You had a very well thought out position there. That was awesome. Yeah, cool. Who else wants to throw in?
I feel like through social media, a lot of people portray high self-confidence,
Yeah.
high self-esteem, but that doesn't necessarily mean that on the inside that's what it is.
Yeah.
I think it's about what people put outwardly versus.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it is interesting that there is so much talk about self-love, and yet aren't we like really depressed as people right now?
Are we?
I think statistically we're like pretty bad.
Yeah.
Like worse than we have been in the past. But there's so much more to talk about. Like, I feel like self-love is like, and self-care is really emphasized right now.
Yeah, the stats on this are not like super great. So 85% of people self-report as having low self-esteem. 85% of people. That's pretty high. And there has been a lot of, we've been watching self-esteem levels like kind of plummeting, especially going on with the social media thing that she was talking about, where it's like 92% of teen girls say they wish they could change something about the way that they looked. And basically the same is true for boys. Plastic surgery done specifically for Instagram has 4x'd in the last 3 years. There's been a 66% increase in suicides in teens who spend over 5 hours a day on their phones. Yeah, 85% of people are self-reporting is having low self-esteem. But then on the other hand, at the same time, as we've got that going on, at the exact same time, we have what's called the the superiority bias going on. And this is another like very well documented thing, which is, here's an example of it. So more than 3/4 of college basketball players think that they are going to play professionally, but actually only 2% of college basketball players are going to play professionally. There's this superiority bias that people, especially Americans, tend to overrate themselves in just about everything. Like if you ask an American about their IQ or about how liked they are in their social circles, like we're notorious overraters of ourselves. And it doesn't get better for like the well-educated. Like actually the worst statistic that I found was 94% of college professors think that they are an above average college professor. Which totally, I loved that stat when I saw it. I was like, of course they do. Of course they're the worst. And it's important to know that this is not just a human thing. This is an American thing. Like other cultures don't overrate themselves as much as we do. And actually like East Asians, for example, to have a tendency to underrate themselves, to rate themselves lower on these kind of personal metrics than they actually perform. But we've got this pump up that's going on with us. And yeah, it's weird that we would have the superiority bias over here where we're overrating ourselves. And then we got this self-esteem crisis on the other end where 85% of us are saying that we have low self-esteem. It's weird that we'd be a culture that's very intent on telling people that they should love themselves, and a culture where so few people love themselves. And it seems like there's this kind of psycho double talk going on in our brains where we've got the superiority bias and the self-esteem crisis going on for both of us. And the something about the culture is making that a part of all of our experiences, right? And yeah, so that looks like a contradiction, and this passage kind of helps us deal with how it isn't completely a contradiction. So let's read it, and then let's come back together and talk about it together. Welcome. Yeah, you can have this.
1 Corinthians 3:21 through 23. 1 Corinthians 4:1 through 7.
Deanna's going to read it out loud really quick for everybody.
No more boasting about human leaders. All things are yours, whether Paul or Apollos or Cephas or the world or life or death or the present or the future, all are yours. And you are of Christ, and Christ is of God. This then is how you ought to regard us, as servants of Christ and as those entrusted with the mysteries God has revealed. Now it is required that those who have been given a trust must prove faithful. I care very little if I am judged by you or by any human court. Indeed, I do not even judge myself. My conscience is clear, but that does not make me innocent. It is the Lord who judges me. Therefore, judge nothing before the appointed time. Wait until the Lord comes. He will bring to light what is hidden in darkness, and it will expose the motives of the heart. At that time, each will receive their praise from God. Now, brothers and sisters, I have applied these things to myself and Apollos for your benefit, so that you may learn from us the meaning of the saying, do not go beyond what is written. Then you will not be puffed up in being a follower of one of us over against the other. For who makes you different from anyone else? What do you have that you did not receive? And if you did receive it, why do you boast as though you did not?
Yeah, take a few minutes to think about it. And if you have any like questions or thoughts, you can throw those out when we come back together. So feel free to write those down.
Yeah, so yeah, that makes sense. Why you guys less fun?
All right, let's bring it back together. Thoughts, observations, questions, go for it. Uh-oh.
No, just like the word judge. And I feel like you use that word and
Yeah.
I'm just curious like what that means. What does that mean?
Yeah. I know a few things about judges back then, but I feel like somebody else is going to know something more. Does anybody want to weigh in that knows about judges?
In the Hebrew, it meant to rule.
Oh, so they're rulers, yeah.
In the Hebrew, it meant to rule. We kind of view it as a process where someone's in a black robe and now guilty, not guilty. But in the Hebrew, the context was ruling over people and making everything right, making everything equal, making everything just.
So it's not about like criticizing.
No.
Yeah.
Kind of along that, what stood out to me, which was when you said at that time which will receive their praise from God.
Yeah, that was strange, huh?
Nothing about criticism.
That's weird, huh? To read, huh?
Not typically what is preached.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't really understand what the phrase he's quoting means in this circumstance. Do not go beyond what is written. I don't really understand what that means in this context.
Yeah. Anyone want to take a stab at that?
I'll take a pretty easy stab at it.
Go for it.
But I think it has to do with harkening back to Jesus and the completion of Judaism. In like older chapters, if somebody is taught very actively in the old theology, don't do that. It's important. But what Jesus does is he brings up, well, there's a ton of laws that we see that we've all broken that require you to be stoned to death. So he's carrying the law of Moses essentially to its completion, but don't go one step further. You know, in the case of like, let's say you're really upset with somebody, you can only be upset with them to the limit. It's wrong to overstep your boundaries.
Okay.
That's how.
Yeah, yeah, but how do you see that relating to what he's talking about in the passage, I guess?
So for like in judgment, so Jesus talks about judgment a couple times, especially in Matthew chapter 5.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that, but I know it's in Matthew chapter 5. And he takes question of judgment. He says, "Do not judge people with unequal weight." Now my Greek's a little rusty, but it has to do with when you're talking about when you're giving a judgment, like how much gold is here to this amount of silver. If you have uneven scales or uneven weights, and he tells you to judge people, he tell you if you are going to, you need to use it equal scales and measure.
Gotcha.
Bread, if you need to do it.
Yeah.
But I think that's what I'm getting at. Somebody said, yeah, God will give us our raise.
Yeah. Gotcha.
People like, tilting it like, you want to taint society you don't like, you want to taint their worldview, is it? Or impugn negative motivations. Sometimes they're just ignorant, or sometimes they really believe.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was thinking like going beyond is like, well, because in the beginning it talks about how like there's Cephas, Apollos, and you're bragging about your connection to these people. I think going on beyond what is written could also be like trying to claim authority because you were discipled by Paul or Cephas. He's like, just stick with what's written. We don't need you like boasting about like who you're connected to. Yeah.
Weird flex.
Yeah, it's a weird flex. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what he's saying. Is like, don't stop the flexing. Yeah. Yeah. What else? What other thoughts, observations, questions?
Wouldn't it also be like adding your own traditions and teaching them as theology?
Yeah.
Like, easy example is like you have to wear a suit and tie to church.
Yeah.
It's like that's not in the book, so we don't need to like start piling that up on other people.
Bring that flower print.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes. I love it. What else?
I'm wondering what he's talking about when he says like stick to what's written, because like this letter was written before like some of the Gospels. So, like, what is he referring to?
Right. Yeah, we were talking about that one a little bit, but I see what you're saying. Yeah, I feel like he's mostly just saying like, yeah, don't flex your knowledge or don't flex your authority because you're attached with these other authority figures. I don't think he's saying let's not canonize the Bible. Yeah.
I was also thinking, like, he's talking to the Corinthians, and I think that they were the ones that were having a problem with speaking in tongues. Like, people that spoke in tongues were kind of viewing themselves as higher than other people, or the wealthy people were not sitting at the same table as the poor people in terms of communion. And that's a kind of going beyond what is written. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I am holier because I have these gifts and these other people don't have. So since he's talking about like don't be puffed up, I'm kind of thinking like there's some sort of comparison going on, like I'm better than these people because I have this spiritual gift, or I'm worse than these people because I don't have this spiritual gift.
Yeah.
The thing that stuck out to me, it's just, I guess it's an observation, it's just verse 7. Like, for who makes you different from anyone else, what do you have that you did not receive?
Yeah. Totally.
I don't know. Let's talk about that at some point later.
Totally.
I find verse 5 interesting. Therefore, judge nothing before the appointed time. Wait until the Lord comes. He will bring the light what is hidden in the darkness and will expose the motives of the heart.
Totally.
At that time, people will receive their praise. I've got.
Yeah, that is the verse we are going to land on tonight because that is the key verse. First, I want to talk about the word puffed. So in verse 6, when he uses the word puffed, it's a really weird word for him to be using there. It's never used in the Bible anywhere else. And it's the word for bellows. So do you guys know what bellows are? Somebody tell us what bellows are. Yeah. It's that thing you use to build fires or to grow fires where you pump it up with air and then it blows a bunch of air out. It's like a blowhard. Like. Yeah. So that's kind of like a bellows action happening inside of a body, right? Why would he choose that metaphor right here? Even though it's an out of place word, he uses it. What's he trying to say with that word? Yeah. Tell me more about the empty part.
It's empty and it just stirs up the fire. It seems to point to God.
Yeah. That's a good point, man.
In other words, don't be filled with hot air.
Don't be full of a bunch of hot air, right? And who knows? Maybe that's where why we say don't be filled up with hot air is because he said bellows. I don't know, but yeah, it's this picture of the ego that it bloats you up as the same time as it hollows you out. It makes you look bigger on the outside, but on the inside it becomes emptier and emptier, right? And I think that is the dynamic where you can have 94% of professors rating themselves in the top, above average as professors, and where you can have 85% of Americans at the same time feeling like they don't have any self-esteem. This self-esteem crisis, and at the same time, the superiority bias, those two actions happening to us at the same time is just, it's the way the ego works, right? It bloats you up while it hollows you out. And you can see how it happens when our culture is mining our attention by streaming the exceptional and the beautiful, right? And so the natural reaction is, oh, this is what we value, this is what matters, like I need to be that. But then 330 million people can't all be exceptional at the same time in their own special little ways. And so we have to have a trophy culture of everyone gets a trophy and everybody's a winner. And so what happens is this insecure need to overrate ourselves. And so at the same time as you have a self-esteem crisis over here, you have a superiority bias growing over here, and they grow together as one and the same thing, because the ego hollows you out while it fills you up, right? It hollows you out while it fills you up. And so what does our culture do to try to solve that problem? What are the tools that we're given? The way that our culture tries to disciple us to deal with the problem of the ego that hollows you out as it puffs you up. Work harder. Self-care Sunday. What do you do on Self-Care Sunday? Make yourself the priority. What else? So here's what's interesting. Like, we've got this problem with the self, the ego inflating ourselves. And so what is our cultural answer? It's more self. Get more self in there, right? Like, love yourself, reconnect with yourself on a hike, find yourself at an open mic night, learn to love your body, fill that empty self with more self. And those practices, those things, they can be a good part of a rich life, but they are not solutions to the ego problem. Because yeah, there's a couple of problems. Like, first of all, with the whole work harder thing, like, the ways that we are trying to love ourselves, most of them are inherently competitive. Like, you don't actually love the way that you look. You just love that you look better than other people. Because then all of a sudden, if you're in a room with a bunch of models, whatever you felt about what you liked about yourself, it's going to vanish in a second. Here's a really good thing that I heard just last week. I listened to the Dax Shepard podcast. Anybody? Armchair. And he was talking about so he's married to Kristen Bell. Anyone? Famous actress. Veronica Mars, The Good Place. There's Frozen. Come on. How does Frozen not get mentioned first? I guess I'm living in a kid world, and it's just. So anyway, Kristen Bell and Dax Shepard, they had this dinner date with Tina Fey and Amy Poehler, because of course they did. And after the dinner date, like, Dax could just tell that Kristen Bell was like, had a dark cloud over her and was feeling depressed. And he was like, what's going on? Like, and she was like, well, I just feel like I'm not that funny. Yeah, so Dax's reaction was like, wait, so you're comparing yourself to the two icons of comedy, the revolutionary icons of, like, some of the best comedians that have ever walked this earth, and you come away from hanging out with them and you say to yourself, I need to feel bad now because I'm not as funny as them. Like Kristen Bell, she was in The Good Place. She is officially funny, right? Like, she's one of the biggest comedic actors of our generation. Like, she gets to be beautiful. She gets to sing just beautifully. If you get to be Anna from Frozen, Clementine will tell you You do not get to feel sorry for your wounded little ego at a dinner date with Amy Poehler and Tina Fey, right? But of course she does, because the way the ego works is the very thing that puffs you up is the thing that hollows you out, and it's a vapor, and it goes away as soon as it enters you. It's gone. It doesn't work. It's just a vapor, right? It's a bunch of hot air. And then here's the second problem, and you were talking about this, is the way, so our culture understands that it's probably not a good idea to fully root your identity in the opinions of other people's. And so the solution is self-esteem. The solution is like to decide, like, who cares about what other people think about you? Learn to love yourself. And I love Lizzo. Lizzo's great, but she's got a song that says the quiet part out loud on how this works. And so, have you guys heard the song? It's like, I'm my own soulmate. I know how to love me. I know that I'm always gonna hold me down. Yeah, I'm my own soulmate. I'm never lonely. I'm a queen. I don't need no crown. Look up in a mirror like, damn, she the one. You know that song? Bad bitch in the mirror like, yeah, I'm in love. It's a really good song. But and I understand how she's trying to get people past the patriarchy, and I understand how she's trying to get people to stop hating themselves, and those are good things. But loving yourself in the mirror, looking in the mirror and saying, damn, she's the one, is only gonna take you so far. And literally, I had already included this Lizzo thing, and I knew I was gonna talk about it. And then last night I was scrolling, and Lizzo had a post. Did anybody see her post from last night? She literally posted, I was like, this is so perfect. She posted this crying, she's in her bed crying, saying, I feel so alone and like I'm a burden to everyone. That's literally, you'll look it up. She literally posted that last night. Lizzo deep down knows it's not working. You can't just shout at yourself, I'm lovely, I'm loved, I'm enough for myself. I always get extra fries, and the sex is fly. It's because, yeah, like, our culture knows that it's not good to just obsess with the opinions of others. So it says, set your own standards for yourself. But we know that that's even more treacherous, because we are our own worst judges. Like one of the hardest things is the ways that we fail our own standards and don't live up to them all the time, right? And so what's the answer? Do we just like lower our standards? Is that what we do? Just lower and lower standards? Is that the way to a healthy self? Because then we're just going to be judging ourselves for having low standards, right? We can't blow ourselves up. It doesn't work. And Paul says that's the bellows. He says that's just puffing you up. Gives us the superiority bias at the same time as it empties us out with the self-esteem crisis. And here's an example of how that double talk works. Probably one of the hardest things I've ever faced in my pretty charmed life was freshman year out of college, I applied to senior year first year out of college. So it is freshman year out of college. I was right. First year out of college, I was applying for jobs, and I got rejected from working for InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. So I ended up working with them for 10 years after that first year that they rejected me. But it was super hard on my little ego, because I was like, man, they told me that I was basically too prideful and I wasn't enough of a team player. And so they didn't have like an older, stable person to put me in my place, and that I needed to go and develop somewhere else because they couldn't handle me. And yeah, it was like, I was like the first person that I knew of that had been rejected. And I was like, I thought I was too good for InterVarsity in the first place. I was like, I should be leading some NGO, some global NGO, or I should be writing some book of philosophy, or I should be a megachurch pastor at age 21, right? Like, I thought I was so hot. And to to get rejected from this job that it's like they don't even pay you. You have to fundraise. Like they take a cut of what you fundraise. You pay them to work for them, and I still got rejected. My little ego was hurting. My little ego was just, it was a caged animal. And so it did the double talk thing, where 1 second I would be saying to myself, I'm too good for that. Like, they don't deserve me. They don't know what they're missing. And then the very next second, I would be saying, I am such a piece of shit. Like, these people know me and they rejected me. Sure, I can do great on these tests or something else, but these people know me. They know me like the real me, and they rejected me. And that hurt. And yeah, that's the way, that's the double talk of the ego. It wants to puff you up and haul you out at the same time. And what's interesting is we notice it as a lack of self-esteem because that's the painful part. But we don't see how it's the puffing up that makes that pain exist too. Because if I hadn't been so puffed up, if I hadn't thought I was such an awesome guy, A, I probably would have gotten the job because I wouldn't have been so annoying in the interview. B, if I'd gotten that job, it wouldn't have fallen so far under my expectations, of these puffed up expectations of who I was supposed to be and what I was supposed to do. So it was actually the puffing that made it so painful. Yeah. And of course our culture is going to look at self-esteem and say, self-esteem is what we need. That's what we need. But then when the answer is just puffing us up more and more, it's not gonna help anything. So Paul says that he's free from that whole game. So in verse 4:3, he says, I care very little if I am judged by you or by any human court. Indeed, I do not even judge myself. My conscience is clear, but that does not make me innocent. What does that tell us about what Paul is doing with his ego?
He's saying that he doesn't even fully understand all the different things that are going on, like all his intentions.
Yeah.
He doesn't fully know himself to judge himself perfectly. So he's saying, God, even though I know that I haven't done a lot of, like clearly bad things, my intentions, I don't even judge my intentions because the Lord is the only one who can judge my intentions.
Yeah. What else? 4:3.
Christ, and when Christ got a hold of him, his ego was killed.
Yeah.
You go to Galatians 2:20.
Yeah. Do you know what Galatians 2:20 is?
Christ,
Say what?
I live, yet not I, but Christ lives in me.
Yeah.
The life which I know of in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me.
Amen. Yeah. Anybody else want to talk? I mean, I think he just hit it.
Whole identity shifted.
Yeah.
Had nothing to do with anything in this world anymore.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
His whole identity shifted and it didn't have anything to do with this world anymore.
And that is so scary. Like when you think about, there are moments I think when the Lord shows me how much I put my security in being better than people, being more whatever. And it's scary because like the even playing field, as much as I like that idea, it's also scary because how can you like stand out? How can you have to be so secure in the love of Christ in order to live like that. So secure. That's scary to our flesh. That's terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've been talking about the two ways that we can judge, either by what other people think of us or by what we think of ourselves. And Paul is saying, I don't really care about either.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that cool? Yeah. Like our culture tracks with the first one. I don't care about what other people think about me. Go, you get it. Self-esteem. Come on. Yeah. But then I don't care about what I think about myself. What does that even mean? I don't care what I think about me. Why would I care what I think about me?
what does he think about himself? Is he like, I don't know, that's not an answerable question.
This is, well, he says he's not even thinking about it, which is great. Think about the freedom where you don't have to think about yourself anymore.
I was gonna say that sounds so free.
Yeah.
The amount of time, even just like neutral thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was freeing all of his listeners too, because he was saying, judgment is the future of him. So don't worry yourself about doing it right now.
Yeah.
You jump ahead 2 passages.
Yeah, yeah.
It says, do you not know you will judge angels? So he knew what our role in the kingdom would be.
Yeah.
So he's saying, relax. Okay? This isn't judgment time. It's coming.
Yeah.
So why worry yourself with that stuff now? You're not responsible for that.
Yeah. Yeah, and Paul's weird because he's one of the top 10 most influential leaders in the world's history, probably. But he's able to say about himself that he's the chief among sinners. So, yeah, it's important to know that pride isn't just thinking too high of yourself. It can be thinking too low of yourself too, because the problem there is the obsession with yourself in the first place. And humility isn't thinking too low of yourself. Humility is not thinking about yourself as often, and not being as worried about yourself, not thinking about yourself all the time, right? Here's an example of what that looks like. You are in March Madness. You're on the Gonzaga Bulldogs, let's say. And you are able to enjoy the buzzer-beating shot that defeated your team just as much as any other fan can, because you look at it and you're like, it's a thing of beauty because I love the game of basketball, and it's a thing of beauty because it's like looking at Mount Rainier and watching that dude just rip out that awesome shot at the end of the game. That kind of what Tim Keller calls it is blessed self-forgetfulness. Just this blessed space of like, I don't need to protect my ego anymore. It's okay. And here's the answer that Paul gives. It's basically what you just said. His answer is God is the judge. I'm not. Why is that the answer for him? That God's the judge and I'm not.
Freeze him up. It's not his job.
Yeah. Yeah, God, he's like, I don't need to judge myself. I don't need to judge you. I don't need to judge anybody because the verdict's in and I'm out of court. Like, I'm already done. Because Jesus is the judge that came down from the bench in order to take the sentence, right? That's who Jesus is, the one that came down from the bench in order to take the sentence in our place. So the verdict's already in, right? And we think of God as a judge a lot, which is really problematic, especially for kind of Seattle culture, especially right now, where we're waking up to the ways that the justice system has been there to enthrone white power. How the ways that sadly, like human courts are often used to just protect the power of those in power.
Or even the way that Christians get judged in not helpful ways.
Yeah. The way that Christianity has become a judgment culture of you got to hide the ways that you're sinful because everyone's got to look perfect. Hold up. What about the judge that leaves the bench in order to take the sentence? Like, that's the judge. And so when Paul's coming from this place of like, my judge put down his gavel to put on my handcuffs, like, that's the kind of love that God has for me. How am I going to judge myself now? Why would I care what I think about myself or what you think about? Like, here's what God thinks about me. Like, what do you know? It's God, right? Yeah, when you get to sit with the love of God, you're not going to be looking for other verdicts. Like, if you work at Salt and Straw, you're not going to be going and buying bulk vanilla ice cream. If you are happily married, you're not going to be going and trolling for hookups at a Chili's on a Friday. If you have the verdict of God, giving you the final verdict in your life, then You're not going to be trolling Instagram for likes. The love of God is so much more powerful. God, help us to get there. Help us to get there. He was, yeah. I'm sure that was part of his duties in the same.
Yeah, and so it's kind of ironic. There's a deep irony.
Yeah.
And he's executing the law. And I think he's executing Christians.
He literally had to stop being a judge to become a Christian.
Yeah. Kind of deep irony.
That is cool. Yeah, that's cool. So here's what I want us to do for the rest of the time. We are going to thought map. Because I think that if we dig into some of the thoughts that, oh, do you want to help her out? Hi. Oh, do you have something to show me? Cool.
I have paper.
This is something I've been doing, like as a prayer practice in the morning, is taking some of the negative thoughts that I beat myself up with and trying to pull them apart and really look at them and see, like, just branch out, like, where does this thought coming from, and what are the things that it's related to, and then just like praying over it and being like, God, like, what do you want to say to me about these like negative thoughts that are bringing me down? And I'll just share a little bit about what mine was. So like the central one that I started with, I got plenty of them, but here's one of them, is the fear that settles into depression that I have failed and will always have a small ministry. So the first thing that like popped out when I was asking God, like, what do I do with this thought, was this word, I will always have a small ministry, like this ownership word of like, this is my ministry. And I felt like Jesus was saying, it's not your ministry. What ministry do you have? Like, you're called to follow me. I asked you to do this. This is my ministry. Like, this is not the Church of Caleb. What do you mean have? Like, and see, so it helped me see the way that this puffed up idea of like, I've got to help church culture. I've got to, make an impact. I got to be the savior. Like, this is my church. Jesus was like, no. Like, it's not yours, it's mine. And then when I was digging into the fears, like that I'm going to underperform my potential, that I'm too lazy, that I'm working in too hard of a place, that I'm not gifted enough, that I'm going to have a small impact. He was like, too lazy, man. You're overworking. Like, Seattle's too hard of a place to start a church. Like, that's why you're here. Like, Seattle is a place that really needs the love of God, and that's why you're here. And when I was talking about being not gifted, he's like, you got all the gifts that you need, and you're becoming like me, and what more do you want? And this idea, especially, I really liked what God was saying about the small impact thing, because he was like, no, my impact is not small. Like, I'm going to renew everything. It's slow in coming, but it is huge, and it's at work in the world, and it's so much beyond like one little thing that I'm doing. So yeah, I feel like Paul, it's one thing to believe the gospel. It's another thing to push the gospel into the negative thoughts that we are culturally conditioned to have, and to let the gospel reshape those thoughts, right? So we're going to give you some time to thought map. Just take one of the negative thoughts that you feel like pops up in your head pretty frequently, and take a look at it. See if you see how maybe there's some puffing up that's being done by the ego, but also some hollowing out, because I think there probably is. Where's Kyle? Could you play some beautiful music for us? And I will pray us in.
We'll share, right?
Yeah, well,
like with whatever we do.
it is a little late. I know we went long, and so if you want to not stay for the share time, you can. No shame in getting out of here. But yeah, we'll spend like probably 8 or 10 minutes in reflection, and then we'll break into groups of 3 to, if you want to share, you can. If you just want to listen to what other people have to say, that's totally fine too. So, and then when you're done, we'll be done. Yeah, I'll pray for us. God, please grant us eyes to see how your gospel could go deeper, how you could take us out of the courtroom of our opinions and out of the courtroom of other people's opinions, and let your verdict of love shape us so that we can stop focusing on our little egos. We want to be free of that. And we know that the mark of being your disciple is freedom from our egos, God. So please do this work in us, Jesus. Please come and free us. Yeah, God, I pray that we would believe your gospel and your verdict. And we would believe that you will make us beautiful. You will heal us. You do forgive us. And we need to stop judging ourselves, and we need to stop judging other people and be free from that. Just stop caring even what we think about ourselves. Give us that freedom, God. Thought map. There's pins.
Yeah, let's just do
How much I have?
pass it around.